Hey folks, Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County, and welcome to Commissioner in a Car. Sorry I took last week off. I had a Commissioner in a Car all ready to go, but then, well, I'll explain in a little bit. But this week we're talking about let's do the party roll. And that's because we have finally, actually, this is the topic I wanted to do last week, because we would have finally done our party enrollment changes that have been sequestered in the lockbox, and I'll tell you why that came about, since February 14th. But before we do that, today is Wednesday, July 15th, and there are 111 days, 111 days until the general election. No more talking about the primary. That's beyond us, almost. Because the reason I didn't come to you last week with Commissioner in a Car is because we had an injunction placed against us certifying the primary for County Ledge 16 and proceeding with a lot of the registration changes that we're making right now. Now I'm not going to talk much about the County Ledge 16 race. Why? Because that's still in court. We had a Teams meeting yesterday, and which is technically open court, and so I can tell you that there was a request for an adjournment by Charlene Tarver, who brought the suit against Niatwa Bullock and the Onondaga County Board of Elections, which is preventing us from counting the last remaining 13 ballots that are cured. There's a 5 ballot margin, and there's allegations of fraud. And that's all I'm going to say. Tarver asked for an adjournment to, I believe it was beyond July 25th, but because of scheduling with the court and the different attorneys, the hearing is now August 5th. Papers are going to be due July 24th, so on and so forth. This is all public record, and I can tell you just that about it. This will be hashed out in court on this race. The other races are certified from the primary, and we are moving on. And we got clarification from the court yesterday that we are allowed to do our party changes and then moving on into registration, which has been paused since 10 days before the election. I can tell you, just a quick status update on that. We have about 5,000 registration changes that have come in since 10 days before the June primary. We were totally caught up on June 13th, but then we have to stop, and we can't register anymore because it could affect the primary election. And then the injunctions, we were going to start registering on June 30th. I'm sorry, on July 7th, but after we certified, but because we got hit with the injunction on July 5th, we had to wait at least a week to get clarification from the court about making sure that we weren't violating the court order. So we did. We got that yesterday, and we started. And the first thing that we do when we're doing registrations is that we actually do what's called the party roll. And no, that's not the jelly roll, but it is fun, right? Because there is a time period where you can't change your party in New York, and it's called the sequester. And that's existed. It exists in every state, but it's existed from time immemorial. It actually existed back in the Tammany Hall's days of New York, when party bosses used to just be able to control elections by just enrolling people in their party at the last minute right before a primary election. And so this was like the sequester was actually kind of a Tammany Hall type reform where back in the 20s, this sequester was put in place where there's a period of time before an election that you're not allowed to change your party to vote in the primary. And that period of time used to be 11 months, up until 2022, and going back to like 1920. Almost 100 years or more. New York said that if you wanted to change your party to vote in the next primary election, you had to change your party 30 days before the general election. And those 30 days before the general election was in October. And the next primary, was in September of the following year. So it was 11 months before the next primary election. Actually, even before the previous general election, that you had to make this party change to be able to vote in the next primary. So that really took on a lot of heat back in 2016 when a lot of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump voters who were not enrolled in the Democrat or Republican Party really wanted to switch their party, and said it was just ridiculous to say that they had to make up their mind 11 months before a primary, because even though then it was like 7 months because the presidential primary was in April, but I digress. But because like back in the October of the previous year, they didn't even know who were going to be on the ballot. So, and it took a while, but once the Democrats took control of the New York legislature, even then it took, they took control in 2018. It took until 2022 for this party change to be altered. And in 2022, a couple of significant things happened. In 2019, they moved the primary back from September to June. And then in 2022, they made February 14th, that's right, Valentine's Day. You viewers of this podcast know that I call that Fall in Love with Your Party Day. That is the day every year that you have to change your party by to be able to vote in the next primary election. Most years that's in June, although in the presidential primary, it's in April. So it depends on when they set that primary. But that being said, we'll worry about that in 2028. But so now from February 14th until 7 days after the June primary, this year, June 30th, all party changes that are received by the boards of elections are put into what's called the lockbox. Now, it's not actually a lockbox, but it used to be. And that's kind of fun. The reason it's called the lockbox is back in the Tammany Hall days, it was actually a steel lockbox that they would put party registrations in, and they would break the lockbox right before the election to find out who was eligible to vote in that primary, because back then parties controlled the primaries, and there wasn't computerized boards of elections where they had computerized voter rolls. This was all done on paper and things like lock boxes and ballot boxes, all of this kind of stuff. That's where we get that terminology from. But we have kind of an electronic lockbox, so to speak, now, where if we get a voter registration, we process any address or name changes, but we cannot process the party changes from February 14th till June 30th, and it goes into a virtual lockbox on our registration system, and then we wait until we do the party roll, which is what we just did, where we tell our system to process all these party changes. And that's a long period, and in a county like Onondaga County with 307,000, 308,000 voters, and getting voter registration changes on the daily, this happens a lot. And it turned out to be, when we went to go do our party change, it was 2,301 voters had changed their party from February 14th to the middle of June. So we went ahead and did our party roll. Here's the results. It is a good indication of where voter registration is going in Onondaga County. because these are people who are consciously making a change. And I can tell you, you can kind of tell if it's going to be a Republican year, if the Republicans are benefiting from this, or a Democratic year, if the Democrats are benefiting from some of this, or sometimes you're saying, well, neither one's benefiting that much. But, well, I'll let the numbers speak for itself. So Democrats gained out of those 2,301, 714 people switched into the Democratic Party, while 562 people switched out of the Democratic Party, and that was a net gain of 152 voters. Republicans, 525 people switched into the Republican Party, and 527 people switched out of the party. So that's a net loss of 2 voters, which means the Democrats increased their margin by 154 voters over Republicans. But the Conservatives gained 108 voters, but lost 108 enrolled in their party, 76 removed themselves from the party, so they had a net of positive 32. The Working Families Party, which is the 4th party, and well behind the Conservatives, they actually gained just almost as many voters. They gained 68, but only lost 38, so they had a net of 30. The blanks, or the non-enrolled party, we're used to them being the big gainers. You may be looking at my weekly wonks and see how they've been gaining throughout every time in memoriam on a lot of these races, especially over the last 10 years. But in the party change, they actually are at a disadvantage because most people are switching out of being a blank and into another party, and not so much vice versa. And you can see that here, whereas the non-enrolleds gained 789 voters and lost 862. So they actually are a big loss there at net loss of 73 voters. And then the other parties, these are former parties that used to be recognized, like the Greens and Liberals and Independents. And independents makes up a lot of these because a lot of people who enrolled as independents thought they were non-enrolled, and now that option is not on the forms, as they re-enroll, update their addresses, they usually switch out of the independents and into the actual blank category, which is the non-enrolled category, which most people think they are. They actually the other party gained 45 voters, but lost 192 voters, and they're one of the smallest categories. So that was a big loss. They actually lost. They're the big losers of this party roll at 147. Now, party roll is important because it gives you a 4-month snapshot. What's happening February to June? Why are people changing? What is the issue here? You get a good idea of whether there is an exodus from one party to another or whatever. This obviously shows that the Democrats are gaining. The Republicans have stayed about even. So you're not seeing like a massive exodus of the Republican Party, but you are seeing a pretty good gain for the Democrats, but not an overwhelming gain. So slight advantage to Democrats. I want to share some other numbers with you before I'm done with this commissioner in car. That's the new registrations. Now, more important than the party rolls are new voters to Onondaga County, whether they're 18-year-olds or people who move into the county. We have a way to track a first-time record in Onondaga County. We had so far since January 1st for 2026, we have 3,957 new voters, people who have just showed up and either 18 or whatever. And Democrats have gained 1,333 voters of those nearly 4,000 voters. Republicans, 769. So the Democrats are almost doubling the Republicans there. So again, better news for the Democrats for the new registrants. Conservatives, 62. Working Families, 41. Again, very small numbers for those third-party groups. But interesting that the Working Families Party isn't trailing the Conservative Party. Like usually they're about 1/3 of the Conservative Party and they're 2/3, so they're gaining some ground there. But the big gainers there, this is where the non-enrolls are really gaining their traction area. And younger voters and newer voters, they have 1,697. So they even outnumber the Democrats in the new registrations. Others is 55 there. So that's the party roll. Now, the party roll is, done, and we are starting to do voter registrations at the board to prepare for the general election. We are already 5,000 voter registrations behind. That's really not that many. I don't want anybody to be scared of that. A lot of those registrations are, updates from our automatic voter registration, and we're going to get through those pretty quickly now that we can start to register. And I expect, us to be caught up by maybe the end of the month, but maybe not. Maybe it might take, the first week of August, but it's definitely not going to be like 2024, where we got, 10, 15, 20,000 registrations behind, and then we got a whole bunch in. We're prepared for it. We have more staff than we had in 2024. We have a better system than we had in 2024. I really believe that, we will be caught up very shortly. We have great staff. They're dedicated. All of our staff is on it. We don't have election work going on. By the way, 90% of the work of the Board of Elections is data management. It's not, everybody looks at the polling places and all that, and that takes a lot of work. But most of the time, the data management is what we do at the Board of Elections. And we do it pretty well, considering our size and considering the number of employees we have compared to other counties. So I'm glad that the judge has allowed us to start processing those and not get further behind. We were about a week farther behind than we wanted to be, but we're on it. And I can already see the numbers starting to go down. So we're going to be on it, and don't anticipate any more bumps. And I'm betting that by the middle of August we'll be totally caught up, if not before. That being said, I really want you to think about going to the Board of Elections website and checking your voter registration. Onvote.net is our quick link there. There's a check your voter registration. If your party or your address is not what you think it should be, then go online, again, at our online voter registration portal at onvote.net, and change your address now. Don't wait to the last minute. If you submitted between now and June 13th, maybe give it a couple more weeks. But if you've submitted it before that and you see on there that it's not been changed, now's the time to make that change. A lot of times people think that when they update their DMV that it's going to automatically update with us, and it should now because we're in AVR, but that just happened a couple of months ago. And a lot of times people think that, they did something when they didn't, or they sent in a form, or maybe the mail just didn't get to us. That happens. So you as a citizen need to be active and check your voter registrations now, because you don't want to wait till November. It's going to be here quicker than you know. So go out there, and you can also apply for a vote by mail ballot, early vote by mail, which is a 1 year. Every election you have to apply for it, or apply for an absentee ballot, and you can get a permanent absentee if you qualify due to sickness, immobility, or living outside of the county that you want to vote in, because, temporarily. But you can get an absentee sent to you on a yearly basis as well. So now's the time to start checking this and get those registrations in. And we will need the registration. So if it's not there, just go online and do an online voter registration. Wait a couple weeks. It should be processed. Check in with this podcast. I'll let you know when we're back to processing daily like we had been all year long until the June 13th pause. And now that's all for this podcast. I did a weekly walk a couple weeks ago for the town of Cicero. I missed it this last weekend. I will do it again this weekend for the town of Clay. Big Clay. It takes a lot of data there, so I'm going to be putting this together. Normally by now I would be, and that's why I didn't do the weekly wonk this weekend, because I was preparing to do for the primary election, but because of the injunction, I can't do that. Although I have most of my data, those 13 ballots are not there, and I don't like doing it until I'm totally certified. So sometime in August, when we're done with this election and the judge, makes his rulings, then we will know where this is going. And I'll do a weekly wonk on the primary election. And there's a lot of interesting data in there. So that's it. Next week, I think I'm going to talk about the state of American democracy. I like to keep this on local stuff, but in the summer I might do some of these other things. And we've had a lot of things happen, and probably we'll have more things happen over the next week. We have the elections assistance commissioners fired this last week. I'm not prepared to talk about it now, but it's bullshit. Sorry. Well, there goes my podcast rating, but it's bullshit, and we all know it's bullshit. But they did nothing. They're heroes, and they did nothing to deserve their firing, but c'est la vie. Donald Trump fired them, but there's also all of these DOJ lawsuits, and President Trump is going to have a press conference on Thursday night where there's a lot of rumors that he's going to be addressing election integrity. We still have the SAVE Act going on. So next week, I'm going to dedicate my podcast to trying to clear the air on some of this stuff. So check that out. And I'll also be traveling next week. I'll be going to the Partnership for Large Election Jurisdictions. So that'll be part of the week after this podcast, because I want to tell you what I learned, what I knew, all of that. So check that all out, and go to DustinZarni.com to get any updates. You can subscribe, get updates when I do any of my content or any election news. And I have a feeling there's going to be a little bit of election news over the next few months. So check it out, DustinZarni.com, or subscribe to any of my social feeds. I'm on just about everything except for Truth Social. Won't go on that. So check it all out. Thank you very much, and enjoy your summer, everyone. Bye-bye.